Okay.
Kind of like a Christmas tree, but condensed into like a circle.
Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
So,
The crowd.
today, what I want to just go over for you guys is very briefly just sort of some key points mistakes that are made on the research paper that can be relatively simply fixed. The first thing I want to go over are citations, so endnotes and footnotes. All right, so when you look at endnotes and footnotes, okay, what you are looking for, either one works. All right, the only difference is that an endnote comes at the end of the paper, the footnote comes at the bottom of the paper, right? The bottom of each page.
You still do the same little thing.
Yes, one of them has uses a Roman numeral, one of them uses a number. I don't remember which one. Very simply done. If you go into Word under Insert at the top, you just go down, Insert, and it will put in either footnote or endnote. Very simply done. Okay?
And you don't care which one.
I don't care. Whatever works better for you. I, in the past, when I've done it, found endnotes to be better for me because it helped me with organization. But the technology was not where it was today. I will say this. It is much, much easier to be adding your citations as you're writing the paper as opposed to writing the paper and then going back in and doing it. That does not mean you have to do every citation as you go along, but knowing where your citations are is a good idea, okay? There are 5 reasons why you would do a citation, okay? 5 reasons. 1, when it is not a well-known fact. If you are talking about the Emancipation Proclamation being written in 1863, that is a known fact. You do not have to cite that, all right? If it is a fact about the Emancipation Proclamation that your average history student wouldn't know, that's what you cite, okay? So that's 1. Number 2, someone else's thesis or opinion. Your paper should be covered with these, okay? The only piece you're giving me your opinion on is your thesis, right? Everything else is being proven by somebody else's, which would be an expert, okay? Number 3, a direct quote, all right? You got a direct quote. Number 4, a stat. 37% of all Americans love research papers, according to the National Research Paper Association of America. Right? Cite that. All right? And number 5 would be a special notation. All right? Something that is unique. All right? So this is what you're doing. All right? This is what you're going to use.
Wait, what do you mean by special?
Something that is unique kind of goes along with this one on the top, right? If you are thinking about your paper, right, every paragraph that you're using likely is going to have a citation in it, at least one, okay? So if you got 10 pages of paper, you should be thinking, I think you're averaging about 30 citations. 25 to 30 would be a good average number, all right? You can have a little less maybe, you can have more.
Is it okay if majority of them are coming from sources like 3 or 4?
I'll talk about that in a second. All right. It is better to oversight than to undercite, right? If you cite something that you didn't need to cite, that's just a little bit more work for you, but no one is going to punish you for having too much citation, okay? All right, questions about that part? When you are deciding what to quote, if you are using a primary source, that is a good thing to quote directly. If you are using a secondary source, you want to paraphrase, all right? So, for example, all right, this is a quote from the book 1861 on the Civil War, all right? The quote is, and this is from the author, a Negro male just past the prime of his life could fetch $1,000, the price of a modest house and lot in the city, okay? That's a good stat. That's a good piece of information. I do not want to read that word for word. Okay? What you want to do in that situation is you want to reword that. Put it in your own words. A good suggestion for doing that is get the information, take the note, and then write it without looking at it. So basically write it from memory. And what you end up doing then is you're writing what you think is important, right? Then go back and make sure you have it. After you write that information, then you cite it still, okay? Because it is that author's idea, all right? But you want to put it in your own words. I don't want to read secondary source quotes. So what students will do is they will give me a 3-line quote from a book that is written by an author that wrote the book 5 years ago. All right, that's about the Civil War, let's say. Right? That's not what you want. You want to put that into your own words because this is your paper. But you need to cite it. If you don't cite it, it's no good. All right?
So, if we're using a quote from a secondary source and we paraphrase it, then we don't need the quotation marks.
Correct. Correct. And then there's no quotation marks. That's exactly right. Okay? So the only things you really want to quote is an actual quote, right? If that makes sense. You don't want to quote a secondary source. All right? So when you are citing, all right, there are 3 different forms of citations that you can use. I will show them to you right now. They are all found in here, though. Use this book. Yeah.
What if there's an actual quote in the secondary?
Then you quote it.
You quote the quote?
Then you quote the quote. If it's because then what you're using, right? So then you are using that as a primary source, right? A direct quote from somebody, right? So then you want to use those words. If it is a summary of someone else's ideas, which is what a secondary source is, then you want to summarize that in your own words.
Like how do you quote or just one?
So if it's a quote, right?
Yeah.
Let's say this was actually written by Frederick Douglass. Okay? If this was written by Frederick Douglass, then you put it into quotations. All right? But if it's written by the author who's writing about what Frederick Douglass said, then you put that into your own words.
But what if you want to write what Frederick Douglass said
If you have what Frederick Douglass said,
from your secondary source?
if it's Frederick Douglass's words, right? If it's the words of the person that you are trying to quote,
Yeah.
all right, then you quote it directly. All right? So if there's a Frederick Douglass quote in a secondary source, quote the Frederick Douglass quote specifically. And then in here, there is a way to quote a quote. Okay? So you find that. It's something like as written in. It's how it looks in the bibliography. Okay? And these are good to have. All right? When you are citing, remember there is a difference between your footnote and endnote citation and your bibliography, right? Those are 2 different forms. I'm going to show you the footnote form right now, okay? The first time that you do it, what you do is you have the writing, and you have the writing, and you have the writing, and then you have a period, and then you have the number in a subscript.
How do you do the
Insert, and then you put it in.
Space.
Nope, right after the period. Okay, right after the period. After the period. Again, you find that in here. Okay. At the bottom, then, what it'll do is it will create a citation for you. Whether you do endnote or footnote, it will create that for you. Okay. So the first citation, you do a full citation.
Wait, so you go to insert and then what?
Insert, and then it will say
Auto text?
no. It'll say endnote or footnote. You're in the wrong. You're in outline. You got to be in.
Regular?
Yeah. So you do first name, last name. Okay. Title of the book in italics. Which I just made up. Okay. Then you go parentheses. Okay. Then you do the publishing information. Where it was published. Who published it? The year it was published. parentheses, comma, the page number, and the period. The most important piece that people leave out is the page number. You gotta have the page number because the purpose of the footnote, if it's got a page number, if it's a book or if it's your scholarly journal,